Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order.
Mr. Chairman, are you going to go to the methodology right now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go get some peeps.
Okay.
I'll be right back. And John? Thanks.
You making the motion, Darcy, to bring it back? Darcy's bringing a motion to bring back the table. Vote. Carried. Mm, 161. All right, does anybody have any other questions on this? Robin?
Great, thank you, Mr. Reeve. I did the numbers following the last conversation, and if we were to increase by 100%, that would have brought us into that 40 to 45 fifth percentile. Based on that, I did some additional numbers here as well that I found that were interesting to me. Currently, our farmland rate fits at the 15th percentile, which generates $638,000 worth of tax revenue. If we were at the 25th percentile, it would bring it up to 890, which is an additional $250,000. If we were at the 50th percentile, it would generate an additional 788,000. If we were at the 75th percentile, it would generate an additional 1.4 million. And if we went to the highest possible, this is the 100th percentile, which is the Lethbridge County is at 0.24 or 0.02486. Our total revenue generated would be 3.75 million, or a difference of 3.112 million. What I found interesting about this right here is that the difference between our county and say Lethbridge County is that you have a food hub that is primarily irrigation with a lot of food processing and a lot of infrastructure that is in there that makes up the difference between what I would describe as a snapshot of Cypress County agriculture versus more of that Lethbridge County agriculture. And it's not something that we couldn't aspire to want to grow and to develop to. But I would argue that the amount of infrastructure requirements to get us from where we are now to where, say, Lethbridge County is with regards to irrigation and food processing is significantly more than what, a $3 million per year generation on taxes would warrant. We're going to need to find ways to generate value in the county utilizing more than just ag revenue. And so I just found those numbers were interesting. And if there's any other questions about other mill rates, I have the entire schedule in front of me here so I can easily answer those.
Anybody else have any questions? Darcy?
So I just want to understand the difference here. And all of a sudden, like, we all agreed to the 20th percentile for everything. And now to move, if we go 100%, that takes us to the 45th percentile for farmland, right? I don't see what changed here all of a sudden. That I think we're all about treating everybody equal here, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think that's why I moved for information, because I think that it needs to be based on a percentile so that everybody, it's applied the same way. I do understand the desire of some council members that want to see more contribution, but I don't think that it's worth losing the principle of having a fair approach to how we tax in order to gain an additional $400,000. To me, it's not worth it. I think that it's better off for us to look at it as at the 20th percentile, we recognize that we would generate an addition of $8 million to $10 million a year in 5 years from now. There's strategic investment that should be encouraged in order to bring value that can hopefully see the value of the ag land that's out there that would then warrant additional rates. I think that we had a conversation at the break on if we could take Cypress County and put ag land or irrigated land in every quarter, we would not have an issue talking to producers and saying we're gonna increase rates. We've taken steps as a council, recently with regards to partnering with watershed projects and expansions, and we've definitely, I think, exhibited a desire to see more value in our ag sector, but we're not there yet. But if we continue to get there, I think that that should be part of our strategic direction is not just prioritizing ag, but putting in the proper investment so that we get value from it, and then we can draw big business. We can draw those food processing plants. That is going to be what helps to diversify, because based on my numbers, if we were to lose $6 million worth of linear right now, even to take our rate from the 20th percentile to the 100th percentile on ag, we're still 5 million short. So it needs to be a balanced approach where everything kicks in, and we need to stop, watching, leaving money on the table with our resource side, but we still can offer them a competitive environment at that 20th percentile.
Does anybody else have anything? Ernest?
So I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but people may or may not know this, but the Alberta government is going to put $50 million into an ag development center in Lethbridge. And now whether that's supposed to help generate business in southern Alberta. Now, I'm not sure if we're so close to Saskatchewan, we don't get the trickle down effect, or maybe more agricultural development in industry will see a uptick.
Richard?
Through the chair to Darcy, I understand the comment about we had talked about the 20% percentile and how what we do for one, we do for everybody. But the thing that we're not taking into consideration is that farmland has not been assessed any different for 35 years, and everything else has. And so when you do an increase on, and I realize residential wasn't going to happen now, but it'll have to happen in the future. We're not doing the same increases because there's been an industry that has, for the lack of better words, been protected for a lot of years. And the time's coming. Just a few notes I wrote to myself was the fact that I'm sure on our requisitions that we do for the homes, I'm thinking the Toyota, I'm thinking our policing costs are going to increase by, my rough numbers was $600 and some $1,000 that I think if they have their way, right? If that could happen. Anyway, there's increases there, right? Okay, and then we have Halo that we've contributed to, which we all agreed is very necessary. So we're going to go with 20% percentile increases to our linear, okay? That's kind of the number or going to the 20th percentile on linear, okay? On everything, all right. So have we accounted for in this discussion that the fact that there might be a whole lot of gas wells that are going to get closed in. What about some oil? That might get closed in too. So you can increase everything that you want in the one area. But if they don't step up to it and they decide they want to close things down, that's fine, eh? So you cannot, in my mind, forget about the one area that has not seen changes for 35 years. It has to come. And the fact is that we have a chance to control it and protect the farmers as we do it, like to bring in something that's even. But the reason it's at this level is because the fact is that the council has always had been controlled by farmers and ranchers. If that changes, that perspective, we have an election coming up. If that changes, it could be maybe only 2 or 3 farmers that don't carry the vote, right? And that they could be looking at the ratepayers could look out there and say, well, look at this is this much here, and they're only paying $20, and they could go for a heck of a lot of bigger increase than what we are looking at right now, and that what we have control of. So that's something that we should not lose sight of. But I really am cautious here. I see gas wells being shut in and stuff, and not that I don't agree that we need to get those numbers up because they've been too low for too long. But you wrote down we're going to bring in how many million, but there's no guarantees.
Robin.
Yeah, there's no guarantees. But at the same time, we're talking about being in the bottom 20% of the entire province in the cost of operating a business. The cost that some of these gas wells are paying from a property tax perspective is comparable to what ag land pays for a quarter section. We're not talking about an amount of money per annum that is going to be the tipping point or the straw that breaks the camel's back on whether a well is going to be profitable or not. I think that, you and I both come from a business background. And if you look at the market and what the market bears and what your competitors are coming in at, how often would you go in at 50% or 75% cheaper than what your nearest competitor is? You're probably not, or you're not going to be in business for very long. What we've benefited from for 30 years is a rich resource sector that has subsidized a lot of what we do. But what we've also done is as a municipal government, we're not allowed to run deficits, right? Like that's one of the things that we're supposed to, you have to be balanced. But I think that when we're budgeting, a lot of times we also think that surplus is bad. But when you're in a business environment, surplus is good. Now, you don't want to do it on the backs of your ratepayers, but if you look at having a business unit like a resource sector, we're at pretty much $5 billion worth of assets. We're ranked in the 87th percentile, which is one of the richest municipalities in the province for actual asset in the ground. Yet our tax rates are among some of the lowest. That to me is a recipe that basically says that for a very long time, we've left a lot of money on the table. I don't know if many of our council knows this or not, but we're only about 40% lower than the city of Medicine Hat for assessment. It's insane. The amount of wealth that we have within the county that we really haven't taken advantage of. And the reality is that if we want to be a municipality that we have low taxes and we don't offer services and we basically run bare bones, then this might be just fine and dandy. But if down the road oil and gas ends up drying up, this is a recipe for amalgamation with the city of Medicine Hat, like toot sweet. And I know that a lot of the residents that we talk to, they want to make sure that Cypress County remains a Cypress County. And so we need to make some smart decisions. Staying in the bottom 20% is a smart decision. It provides for competitiveness. At the same time, if we take some money that we have that comes in, that will come in, and we put it into the right things, and then we give the oil and gas guys that have contributed so much to the success of our municipality and our region, we give them the credit that they're due. as being partners, and that they have their, just like when CAP, we do these projects for CAP, and we, put up a sign that says this has been, contributed by or helped paid for by CAP. Man, when 65 to 70% of everything that we do in this county is paid for by oil and gas, maybe we need to give the industry a little bit more credit, because they're definitely helping everybody out with this too. So, I moved this for information, but I think I would like to amend that to have more of an official a request to have staff bring this back for a decision, in the next month. We've talked long enough about this. I don't think that we can talk more about it. We've talked about this for 2 years. I would like to see this up for decision in a month, where we talk about implementing this, whether or not we implement it this year at the end of COVID. I think maybe we even say, hey, you know what, that this gets implemented next year, and that we have a 5-year plan, and that we have a, maybe a specific commitment to assign certain percentage of the dollars that we generate that are in a difference towards investment into community, because that's important. But we need to move this ball forward, or all go down with the ship. I think that this is important for long-term planning as well. So my motion, Mr. Reeve, I'll amend it, if you will, to request that staff bring this back in 1 month for a decision from council on the implementation of the tax methodology and plan.
Carolyn?
Mr. Chairman, Council, just a comment. So we're coming down to the crunch for budget, final budget, and we need to have the mill rate bylaw approved for in the first meeting in May, because we need to get tax notices out. So it'll come back next meeting.
That works. I'll amend it so that it comes back for next meeting for decision. It gives us time that we can have further conversation and then have a vote for it next meeting.
So when the draft budget is prepared, we need some guidance on what to implement there. So what I would recommend is that the draft budget would have bringing up to the 20th percentile. Yep. And then, so that, because we need some direction on that, just to prepare that it's a draft budget for your consideration. But we need to, and then the next following meeting, we need to get the mill rate bylaw done, so we can, because now the tax bylaw is due the end of June. So we need to have the tax notices out no later than like the 3rd week, and that's pushing it, because we have to give them 7 days as well for mailing and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to share that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Ernest?
So when you're bringing back information for us, could you provide sort of a list of, like Steve would probably have an idea what the assessment on ag quarters are? So if your assessment's this is going to be your increase. So it's really easy to relate to somebody or understand what we're talking about in actual dollars.
Yeah, totally. We did that in the past. We've done that in the past, just to show the different classes and what the impacts would be, for sure.
Like if your quarter's worth, assessed at, if you're paying $40 taxes, how much it'll go up. If you're paying $100, this is how much it's going to go up. Thank you.
Any other questions? Richard? Oh, sorry, Darcy. Go ahead, Darcy.
All right, one question and then game on. Steve, I think I asked for this before, but residential also has farmers in it. I don't know if we ever did find that number where, like a landowner has a house, is that, you know what it means, that just paying the $140 a quarter, he's also paying for his house, right?
It's a good reminder. But farmland is just talking about the things that are used for raising, producing, and selling the ag product. So that's the ground. The farms will often come with a single family dwelling. that pay their taxes or get their assessment and pay their taxes along with the residential portion when you see those in graphs. Depending how you split the parcel size, if you split the parcel size by 4 acres, so anything smaller than 4 acres is considered an acreage. And those acreage owners can also be farmers, can also be acreage owners, but it's about 50-50. It's about 60-40 at that 4 acre size. If you get into the 10 acres, it's closer to 50-50. So it is hamlet to included with the acreage owners. It'd be tough to argue either way that one was contributing far greater than the other.
Okay. Now, seems how Richard's just so upset with the farmers for not paying anything, but I just believe that agriculture has built Cypress County. The roads are pretty much all done. Like when we go on our road tour, what are we fixing nowadays? Basically nothing, right? Upgrading, probably stuff we wouldn't have to do. So all of our expenses are coming from water lines to our hamlets, all that kind of stuff. That's where our major expenses are and always will be. I mean, this is Cypress County, not Cypress suburb of Medicine Hat. There's a reason everybody comes out here is because the taxes are low. Let's be honest. And when you look at, hasn't been changed for 30 years, it's the assessment. It has nothing to do with the mill. We can make the mill rate what we want. It's just, if we're being fair, every resident in Cypress County does get subsidized $1,200. Let's remember that. We're looking after, we lose some gas wells. Well, I mean, we're moving up more than the farmland, let's be honest. That ain't gonna help nothing. So, I mean, to pick on one industry is absolutely unfair. If we pick the 20th percentile, then everything's the 20th percentile.
Anybody else? Richard?
So just to go with, if I had an acreage valued at, and these are numbers that come off the 2020 assessment. An assessment of a farmyard that would be valued at $1.3 million. The total tax bill is $4,165. The assessment on an acreage, which is mine, which is 1.1 million, is $6,755. So as Stephen has said, when he takes a look at the purpose of that parcel, that piece of land with the houses and the buildings on, the taxation is totally different. So my municipal portion, and that's the only numbers I really want to work with, is $3,100. And the farmyard that is actually valued at $200,000 more, their municipal portion is $1,700. So that's that. There's what's the word I'm looking for? So Darcy, it's not the same. You're not paying the same as an acreage owner is. There's an advantage there that has been given to the farmers, eh? And I have those pieces of paper, but Steve can just definitely verify it. So it's just that I just want to see a catch up happen on that farmland. And I think we need maybe to have a committee of the whole, if that's an idea, but we need to sit down and actually have a heart-to-heart talk about what is actually being paid for farmland and what isn't. And Dustin, I'm looking your way. Dry land, you guys get 30 bushel to an acre, right? Maybe on a crop, or 40? Okay, so what would you get on irrigation, like 60? Would it double? Triples, your production triples. So when I'm asking for farmland to step up to the plate and be assessed more, I look at our roads, I look at our bridges, I look at the maintenance, that how much more has to be done, because all of a sudden, in that irrigated areas, and we have them stretched all over except if we go north, that those roads have 3 times the production or 3 times the amount of traffic coming on them. You have 3 times the amount of our bridges are being worn, not being used more, but so it's not the same as it was 20 years ago. And nothing has been done to the farm taxes to show the difference in it. We've done this huge increase in our fire department. We've doubled, haven't we, in the last 5 years, what our budget is? Because it used to be next to nothing. Now it's 1.7 million. We've taken on air rescue. There's just so many things. The farming is not the same anymore. And as we talk about this and the fact that there's going to be more irrigation happening to the west, there's just no doubt about it. As it might take a few years for those projects to come through, but it's just like if you would grow a specialty crop of potatoes or beets or stuff, that's even going to be more traffic on our roads. We've seen it when we have a greenhouse. We've seen it when we have the Hutterites have their colonies in a certain area, and people haul their grain now to a certain area, and they keep all their bins in one area because it's easier to work with, right? So that means those roads have way more traffic than they had before. So it's just one part of it that I see as such an unbalance, and I would at least like to discuss it. And I throw out the 100% and everybody throws up their hands as if they're in a panic. But if you're only, I mean, I realize grassland hasn't probably changed and it can't. It only supports so many animal units. But if you're only paying $20 and it goes up 100% in 5 years, that's $40. That doesn't help much for our roads, but it's a start, okay? It's actually a fair contribution. And that's where I'd like to see us have an in-depth conversation about where we are with that. And that 20% percentile doesn't work on that. So you guys need all this information from Stephen to study it, and then we need to have a meeting and sit down.
Dustin?
And we have a delegation at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, they're waiting for us.
Okay, well, I have too much to say, so we'll go to that instead. I'll table it again.
Okay. Dustin's making a motion to table this one more time. Vote. Carried. Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. Sebastian here. I can hear you very well.
Okay. We are all present, so we will give the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Just like to thank council, thank everyone for allowing us to speak and to present today. So we've had quite a few discussions with a few members of the county, of the planning and public works department. So we're happy we have this opportunity today to be able to discuss furthermore our application with respect to the Winifred Wind Farm project. So I didn't have a formal presentation, but what I had in mind basically was to go over the permit request or the application that we submitted 3 weeks ago together with our delegation request. So it's quite a detailed document. We tried to be as thorough as possible and to maybe give a summary of past discussions and things that were looked at and a bit where we stand and next steps as well in our project. Just to make sure, I know we've done presentations in the past, so I don't know who's everybody around the table, but I'm assuming that everyone's familiar with NRFIN and with the Winifred project. Should I perhaps start with a very high level introduction, or we could dive in directly into the topic for today?
No, I think we've all been here for your presentation before, so you can go directly into your topic for the day.
Okay, thank you very much. And maybe just I can mention there's a colleague, Debbie Kovacs from JC Russell, who's the engineering firm that we've hired for support and to manage this whole interconnection process. And she's also connected via phone with me today. So like I said, what I had in mind was to go over and very high level, like I mentioned, so the permit request or the application that we submitted together with our delegation request, we went into a lot of detail to make sure we tried to cover and give as much information as possible, but I just sort of scrolled through it and give a high level presentation about what's contained and a bit the summary, the history of this project. So just maybe to start as an introduction as a reminder, but we're talking about the Winifred Wind Power Project. So it's a 22 turbine wind project. We're targeting a commercial operation date of late 2023. And there's two main aspects, if I can say. So the wind power plant, so the actual turbines with the substation and the collector system, and the connection project for Winifred, which is the 25-kilometer transmission line, which is the topic we were addressing today. So out of those 22 turbines, 2 would be sited in Cypress County, and the other 20 would be within 40 miles. And just very quickly, but the high level dates. So I mentioned the commercial operation date of 2023, but the actual application to the AUC for permit and license, we are targeting to have that filed to the AUC within the next 2 weeks. So we're getting very close to the end. And with respect to the connection project, so the transmission line, we're looking at having everything ready early May to have a filing target date of early June. So this is a process that's obviously we're working together with the Alberta Electric System Operator, the ASO, following a bit their timeline since they're managing the process together with us. So this was a bit of an introduction, and I think it covers a little bit the section B in our document of the project overview that we submitted. Just moving on to section C, so that the initial permit request and the progress made to date. So once again, I'm not sure how much time we have, but I'll try to go very high level, and please stop me for questions or if there's anything we should go into more detail. But I'll try to go rather quickly to make sure that we have enough time for questions and hopefully for a discussion at the end. So project started. We obviously have to start between our wind farm and the Bullshed substation. We have to look at all potential routes for the transmission line. So initially, the main routes that we looked at were a large portion of it on Township Road 114 or 120, which were the two main alternatives we were looking at. Obviously, we refer to two alternatives, but it's always double. So it's 4. There's always the northern side or the southern side. So it's sort of four different routes, even if it's only 2 township roads. So very quickly, October, November, we had the direction from council to purchase road allowance since there was a potential road widening project for these two township roads. So we had discussions with county representatives. I try to explain why, and I'm happy to go into more details, but I'll just go quickly now. Basically, why it wasn't possible for us to follow through this suggestion. It's a very different type of right of way. A road allowance is effectively purchasing the land for the landowners from the landowners, whereas a transmission utility easement is typically cited in road allowance, and it is just basically an easement as a pipeline would be. So we wouldn't be purchasing the land, so we didn't have really so the transmission line wasn't the one pushing or creating the necessity for the road widening. And as a private entity, we don't really have a mandate to acquire road allowance, and contrary to obviously a county who has the needs for the roads. So in those discussions, and once again, I'm going very high level compared to the document that we've submitted, but basically it became clear that the Township Road 20 was a more challenging route, and we sort of turned our focus based on the discussions we've had to Township Road 114, which didn't have an active or less confirmed, if I can say, and I'd be happy to have more information about this, but the road widening project was not as advanced, I can say, on this township road. So we turned our focus to that road as a preferred route, once again looking at both north and south side, and started consultations as well with the stakeholders on this route. We had other discussions and other submission from Enerfin on this road, and we had feedback from council requesting us or suggesting we'd either bury the transmission line from 8 feet deep or use the 30-meter setback. So once again, those two solutions proved to be challenging for us to implement. So the 8 feet deep, so this is not typical for a transmission line. There's obviously the economics of it, which is quite challenging. So it's not something that's that we can see in other parts of the province for transmission lines to be buried. It's quite expensive, and typically those distribution lines those transmission lines would be overhead in the vast majority, or not if for all transmission lines. And with respect to the 30 meters setback, well, it poses also a challenge for stakeholders. We would be closer to, more inside of their private land, so more affection to the irrigation pivots. Also, would have the challenge with Alberta Environment and Parks, who are asking us to basically follow existing disturbances such as roads. So having a 30-meter setback from the road allowance would no longer comply with that requirement from them. So we couldn't really follow these two suggestions, which basically brings us to today, where we'd like to explain why, after all the work that we've done, we still believe that the preferred route, and that's moving on to section D of the application that we've shared. So looking at all the alternatives that we've looked at, we still believe that being inside the road allowance, so the proposal was being 1 meter inside the road allowance on the north side of Township Road 114 would be the one that would have overall least impact. So looking at all the different obviously inputs that we have to look into, so the engineering, the stakeholder comments, the environment, obviously, so the county's plans for these roads. So looking at all these variables, if I can say, so our right now our preferred route would be to use the south side of Township Road 114, and we heard very clearly about the challenge of Township Road 120. So we at the beginning of the project, the east side of Highway 3 was coming out of the Bullshed substation was using Township Road 120. So we've changed the routing there as well to sort of go north from Bullshed, and we've submitted maps as well with the application. So for more clarity, there were also detailed maps of the routing that were submitted together with this written document. So you can see we're going north out of the Bullshed substation. And alongside Highway 3, we are in discussions with Alberta Transportation to make sure we respect the clearance and the instruction that they're giving us. So we are no longer using or planning to use the Township Road 120, either east or west of Highway 3. And so description of the preferred route. So I think perhaps I won't cover that section here of our documents. I think that probably looking at the map is the best way to understand the routing that we are proposing. I would move directly to the last section, which is section F, which is next step and details of the regulatory requirement. So the reason why we included such a detailed sections is to make sure we didn't know how familiar council was with the whole AUC process with respect to transmission line and with the hearings. So we wanted to give as much background information and bit explain how next steps could go through. So basically, as I mentioned in an introduction, we are aiming at having everything ready at the beginning of May to have a filing to the AUC for this connection process at the beginning of June. And based on, in our application, there's obviously a lot of documents. There's the stakeholder engagement summary, so all the information that we are still conducting today, and we've obviously started before, but we are still discussing with landowners to gather feedback and comments if there are specific concerns with respect to the preferred route. There's obviously the environmental surveys and the route with respect to setbacks and all the details. So there's all these, I'm naming these two, but there's obviously a lot more documents that come into play. So to have a complete application to the AUC, and the whole idea, if I can summarize it very high level. So basically, we're aiming to present what we believe is the route of least impact. So the preferred route being overall the least impact, and at the end, the commission, the AUC is going to be the entity, who's going to make a decision of what's the preferred route, or what's the most acceptable route based on all the different parties that can decide to intervene, or based on the recommendation from AEP, based on our summary from stakeholder engagement, and from all the works that have been done as well from an engineering perspective. So in case of if Cypress could decide to be an intervener and request standing in the hearing, and please stop me if you're already very familiar with all this process. You can stop me, or but I'll just to as a high level. No, so the Cypress could decide to be an intervener and then participate in the process, basically in the hearing, either by written form or by a panel of experts with testimonies, but basically to explain why one or another option is better, or has more or less impact from the county's perspective. And ultimately, at the end of the process, the AUC will be the ones deciding on, based on all the information they've received on the interveners, which route do they believe is the one that has the least impact for this connection process. And maybe something I should have mentioned from the beginning, but this is we call it it's the market participant choice. So it's a rather new process. There has not been that many in Alberta yet that have made it as far as we have. There's at least one that's already built and energized, but in the permitting process, there's not that many that are as advanced as we are. But the market participant choice is one where we, as a developer, we take over the utilities role, but only during the development and construction phase. So basically, we, in this case, this line, if it was a standard process, it would have been developed. So all these works, these discussions would have been directly with Altalink, who's the utility in this area. So they would have been the one doing the engineering, the stakeholder engagement, all these works that we're taking over, as well as the construction. So in this case, in the market participant, we are sort of substituting ourselves. So we're taking the role of Altalink up to energization, so up to when the line will be built. And once it's time operation, that's when we actually transfer the ownership to Altalink. So it will eventually become an Altalink line, Altalink utility, and they will be the one who will be doing the operations of, and they will own effectively the transmission line. So I tried to go quickly and very high level. I know I skipped a few sections of the document that we had submitted. I don't know if all councillors had time to review it prior to the meeting, or if it will be after, but I'm definitely interested to hear comments or questions about the process, or about the route that we are proposing. We're definitely grateful that we had some feedback. We had some very good discussions with the public works and the development team to understand better the county's perspective for this project. We've had some suggestions that we'd look into, and just lately a good suggestion to look into Altalink's, I believe it was maybe even a suggestion from council, to look into one of Altalink's development project in the area. So we had a discussion with them just last week. So they do have a transmission work close to our project, but I don't have details of exactly what the project is. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's a synergy that could be taken advantage of, to have both projects sort of joined together. According to what I've been told by Altalink representatives, it's quite a few kilometers away. So that they're not close enough. No, just a few, even if it's only 5 kilometers for a transmission line. Adding extra length is always something that's quite challenging due to the cost of optimal routing. So unfortunately, that was an excellent suggestion, but unfortunately, it's not something that we're going to be able to use for this project. But we're certainly happy to hear if there are any comments or any suggestions of how can we make this project as streamlined as possible, and integrate the county's comments, and make sure that we have the least impacting route for all interested parties.
Okay. So which is cheaper for you, the 5 kilometers away or burying the line that was suggested on the 114?
So I mentioned 5 kilometers. To be honest, I don't have the details, so I don't know exactly what their project is. So I don't know exactly the impact for that project, and I don't have details of what it is. But they are the ones who told me that they didn't see that there was a synergy that could be taken advantage of between those two projects due to the distance between the two. And they mentioned 5 kilometers, but I don't know if they're parallel or if there's one point that they're 5 kilometers away. And with respect to burying the line, well, I think burying the line is just not, even technically, I'm not a line designer and a line engineer, but I understand even technically it's not something that's being done to bury transmission line. It's something that can be done at the distribution level, but there's some 8 feet deep for a transmission line is not something that's sort of up to standards and code. There's some heat dissipation requirement, and it's just my understanding is that it's in very specific small, like downtown areas and things like that, very specific projects where you'd see these types of line could be buried perhaps. But my understanding is that for transmission line, the buried option is not really something that can be considered for cost, but also for technical reasons.
Okay, we have a counselor here that actually has the information you're looking for, so I will hand it over to him.
Great.
So I guess I'll just start with where you talked about the 879 line that AltaLink's working on rebuilding. So it's 9.64 kilometers south of your project. And what they're doing is they're doing a possible realignment and some rehab of that line that runs to the current sub that you're looking at, compared to your 24.1 kilometers that you guys are currently suggesting to run the line to the substation. When you talk about not being able to bury that line, I find that kind of hard to believe, considering 85% of Saskatchewan's transmission utilities are buried in the ground. There is a lot of above ground structures still, but at 85%, I just find it hard to believe that you can't bury the line.
Yeah, maybe you're referring to distribution lines, because
it's distribution, three-phase, or the big, all the main transmissions. There's a lot of line buried in Saskatchewan.
So
I'd have a good look at that before you tell me you can't.
Yeah, my understanding is that burying transmission line for long distances is not something that's economically viable.
Well,
for you,
if I could add something there, there's reliability issues from going from overhead to underground to overhead. There's quite a bit of reliability issues when you try to do that. So I know in a lot of previous applications I've worked with the AUC on, they don't tend to favor burying transmission lines.
Thank you, Debbie. And if I may add, so I didn't know. Thank you very much for the information about 879L. So we are aware of this transmission line. So I didn't know this was the project that was referred to. I didn't have that precision from AltaLink. But you're right. I think there is an upgrade being performed on this line, on the 879L. However, my understanding is that the upgrade is to accommodate the full capacity of the Rattlesnake Wind Farm project. So when the upgrade is completed, my understanding is that the full capacity of that line will be used. Actually, the upgrade is required so the line will actually be full, and there won't be any more room, it is one of the earliest options that we looked at in 2019. So if that's the project that was referred to, I'm afraid it's not even a question of distances of cost, but that line is being upgraded to allow the neighbor project to connect. So there's no room for us to connect on that line, which would have been a good alternative. That would have been great. Yes.
I think you're referring to the Etscombe substation. That's a 600L line That's the one that it's going to run that runs that wind project down there that they recently upgraded. This one they're doing upgraded to aging infrastructure is what they're doing. That line's been there since 1956. So I know I've been in conversations with Altalink about it too, because I actually have that 879 line that runs through my place. And they said it can be fully upgraded and is possible to take and add more to it, but a substation may be required. I also, in my conversations about that, I heard that Altalink originally did offer the opportunity of a substation, but you guys turned that down.
Sorry, say again, they offered us the opportunity of a substation?
Yeah, I heard the opportunity, there was a substation offered for the wind project at Whitlaw, but the response I understood was that you were more interested in building transmission lines than having a substation.
No, actually, obviously for us, I mean, the lowest cost option is more attractive. And if we had the option to connect to 879L, which is just 10 kilometers south of the project, it would have been attractive. Unfortunately, that option is not available, given that that line will be fully used. The capacity will be fully used by the project that's currently under construction, which is the Rattlesnake project. So it's a different one, I think, that the one you were referring to with Etzicom substation. So yeah, and about the substation, I mean, we are building a project substation, so there will be a substation built it's actually in 40 miles and pretty central to our project in the 40-mile county. So we do have a substation, and we will be tying in with the transmission line to the Bullshed substation. So we're not really, there's no economy of one less substation. We have a project substation as well, which is required.
Can I make an addition here, Sebastian? So I don't think we have a choice, because the ISO, the Legislative Transmission Authority for Alberta, has identified the project zone and where we need to terminate the transmission line into Altalink Bullshed from the power plant site. So we're really limited to the project area that the ISO identified for us to use for the transmission component.
That's right. That's a good point, Debbie. So at the very beginning of the project, basically in the process, the ASO are really the ones leading this discussion of where can we and how can we connect to the grid. No, they are the ones who have the inner knowledge of the grid and where is their capacity, where there's not. So they would, together with them, we identify alternatives and they ask us to study different alternatives. So that 879L was initially one of the alternatives that we looked at, but it's no longer viable, and the options to connect at Bullshed is currently the only one that we have for this project. So this process of seeing what's the optimal connection on a grid perspective, and obviously there's always a cost perspective, but for this project, the optimal solution to connect to Bullshed was determined together and leaded by the Alberta Electric System Operator, which are the ones managing. We are participating, but they are the one leading. They are the leading in this interconnection process.
Okay, who's your AESO contact so we can have a discussion with them?
Yeah, so our project manager is Doug Walker.
That's yours, or is that?
That's the project.
ASO?
So he's ASO employee. He's the one that's managing our project on behalf of the ASO.
Would you be able to forward that contact information to Kayleen, please?
Sure, yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Dustin?
So question on, with this line, what is the distance that you have to stay away from occupied structures with a 138 kVA line?
What do you mean to by occupied structure?
So like a household, for example. So what is the distance that has to be away from a house under the regulatory authority?
I do not have that answer on the top of my head, but I would have to ask our engineering team, and I could get back to you on this.
Okay, because that is one
from a house.
I have on that on your chosen route is you're 130 feet off of a residence. And that's pretty close to have 138 kVA line to your house, in my opinion.
So I'll ask, and I'll try to get the information and the if there's a specific mention in the electric code that we can refer to. But I mean, we're working with JC Russell, and they're a very experienced firm, local in Alberta, and they've done these transmission line design for other projects. So I'm confident they are following standards that are applicable for this level of tension for this line, and that the proposed route is compliant. But I can certainly get back to you on the distance, because I personally don't know.
Another one to look at too, there's also an anhydrous bullet that you guys are going right past, and I know for a fact that's a 250-foot setback for anything over 100 kVA from it, and you're within 100 feet of it. So
what, Sari? You mentioned we are
anhydrous ammonia.
Yes.
So under the Act, the Transportation Authority of Alberta, it is 100 feet distance that anything over 100 kVA has to stay away from it. So this is kind of, when we were talking about going underground, it was for both with the one residence that's quite close to the road and this, because they're both on that 114 in very close proximity to where you want to bring that line by.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I definitely took a note of your comment, and maybe to reassure you. So the engineering team did do a drive-by. I don't know if that's the right expression, but they actually went to site. This is not only a desktop route that we are proposing. So there was actually field works where they actually went to site and looked at distances from all routes to see which was the one with least impact. And obviously there's all the satellite imagery that we can look at as well. But they've definitely looked at it with great attention and great detail to make sure we were proposing a route that was compliant with the codes and regulation.
Terrell-Lynn?
So the response for the clarifications, if you could send all of that to Kayleen, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, so I've got, just to make sure I don't miss anything, but I've got the contact of the PM at ASO, confirm the distance from a house and from the ammonia plant that we are taking, that we have to follow based on regulations. Am I missing something so far? Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything else?
If I may ask, so with respect to the 4 alternatives that we're looking at, no, and I understand there's obviously that question of how far from the road, but with respect to, did we understand correctly, you know, that between the 4 options, so Township Road 120 is the least preferred one, or if I can say, then it would be 114, and between north and south, the south side would also be the preferred location between the 4 for the county's perspective. Am I correct in my understanding?
To the half-mile line.
Sorry? I'm asking, so between north and south and between 114 and 120.
Yeah, one sec. Kayleen's coming to the mic here.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Sebastian. It's Kayleen here.
Hi, Kayleen.
So part of our initial discussions and with Public Works as well, there was another identified route that the county had posed that in that neck of the woods would have been our preferred, and that was at the half-mile line north of the 114.
Yes.
So I understand through those discussions, I think that the comment then was that Alberta Environment and Parks wouldn't approve it because it's further disturbance. But I think from the county's perspective, that would be a preferred option to look at compared to the 114.
Okay. So it's noted, and yeah, like you mentioned, so we've already have discussions with the AEP and lately, so their instructions and like I said, Alberta Environment Parks is not the entity that ultimately makes the decision. It's the AUC, but from their perspective, from AEP's perspective, they want us to follow existing disturbances, so roads basically.
Your contact with Alberta Environment, would you be able to forward that to Kayleen as well so we can touch base with them?
I can. It's not really an official contact. We sort of submit an application and they get back to us. But I can look to see who would be. So you'd like someone at AEP or someone who has looked at our file?
Someone who's looked at your file and has shared those thoughts with you.
So I'll see who I can point to.
Thank you.
Dustin?
Will there be any need for utility right-of-ways on any adjacent properties?
So we have one, so you mean on private? So obviously there's 40 Mile, there's a section in 40 Mile County. There's a utility easement with Alberta Transportation along Highway 3. And there's also a very small, but there's a private easement that's required as well on a private landowner.
Just a clarification, Terlin. So the line has to be out of AT's right of way?
No, it will be. So we've made a similar request to Alberta Transportation, basically to be sited on the edge of their road allowance. So there will be an easement, a transmission easement with Alberta Transportation to use the road allowance from Alberta Transportation to site the transmission line.
Within the right of way?
Yes.
They have given you approval for that?
So we've had their comments. We've received basically their preference. We've had the similar discussion that we've had here. So basically they've indicated us where they would prefer us to site. I don't know if I can say it's a formal approval, but they've definitely given us guidance of where they would prefer us to be. And it's quite standard practice to be within the road allowance.
Do we have any other questions?
For council, we'll confirm with Darren Davidson about the siting of the line in the AT right of way.
Well, I'm not seeing any other questions from council. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground. So thank you for all the questions. We're definitely happy to come back and present updates or follow-ups on any of these questions, and we'll be following up quickly with the contact information and the questions that we were asked today. And yeah, we're happy if there's anything through Kayleen or through council, if we can at a future meeting. We're very happy to continue to engage and share as detailed information as we can of the process and take into account the county's input.
Okay, not seeing anybody else looking for any more information. So thank you very much for your information today, and you have a good day.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll take a 5-minute break here. You want to take it off table again? Yeah. Darcy's making a motion to take off the table again. Vote. Carried. Okay. Steve has got a very important board now.
Chairman, one thing that Steve's going to share about is the difference on use on outbuildings. I think that that's something that needs to be shared as well.
Kind of explained.
Y'all just kind of humor me for a second. When we're looking at the differences between, farm buildings and Councillor Igley brought up a good point that it's about 50-50, and it would be hard to split hairs. And I don't think it's an argument worth having. But here's the difference. So here would just be a representative of a quarter section. There's 160 acres. And if council would reflect back to one of the meetings of the whole we had, where we used Hans Donaldson and Sock, and that is right back to that example. So we've got 160 acres. Now, as farmland, our assessment's only about 4,500. Okay, for assessment, so that gets us into the municipal portion. Let's call it $40, right? So the same 160 acres. Now, I can't say greenhouse, but let's say this were all trailer storage, for example. This would be to the tune of $1 million of market land. Maybe that's about 4 miles south, that's about $1 million quarter, give or take. Okay, so that's the disparity, and it's based on use. So raising production, sale of agriculture, market use, market value, right? Now, when we get into that same house,
Oh, he's drawing Darcy's house now.
yeah, I thought I was drawing my place. Actually, it's like you've seen your house. Okay, so this is a 4-acre parcel, and that makes 156 acres of farmland remaining. Excuse me, it's actually 3 acres. So this house and that 3-acre parcel are identical to a 3-acre acreage. House to house, that's where you live, and that's your primary residence. Apples to apples, slam dunk. Where assessment and subsequent taxation come and are different are in the outbuildings. So what I'm drawing here is maybe, let's just say, a 4-bay pull-through shop. If this is used in connection with the raising, production, and sale, you guys are going to be saying that in your sleep. The raising, production, and sale of an agricultural product, there is no assessment and no taxes on that outbuilding. But the acreage owner that perhaps enjoys some cars or that type of thing, it would be assessed and would be taxed. So that's a large factor. That's assessment policy. It's hard to get into the discussion from setting tax rates on the fairness of that. In one breath, we would need to accept that as a policy that might be a little bit out of our control. But that doesn't mean that the amount of the taxation level, it wouldn't be peeled down all the structures. That's not to say that this raising, production, and sale should be more or less taxation. That's up for the people who wear the big crowns.
Plus your farmyard on the left gets 65,000 off their house too, right?
61,540, right?
Yeah, 61,540.
So that's, thanks for that veteran account there. Basically, on the farm parcel, based on the amount of property you own, there'll be an exemption of 61,540. Councillor Rossler nailed it. Reducing the assessment on the house. So if this house was $400,000, I should have picked rounded numbers. If this house was 400,661,540, and this house was the same, this would be reduced by that amount of assessment, and I think it was about $400 tax. So there is an inherent policy that reduces the value of that. That started in 1984. Rural assessment policy, that 61,540 used to represent a house about 1,100 to 1,200 square foot. That was the total value of the house back in that time. So at that time, in the hazards or the written word, the legislature, the minister at the time declared that they wanted to help. They wanted everyone to help subsidize the production of food and make Alberta producers be able to get their product to market at the lowest price point possible.
Robin?
On the second one though, if the rest of that quarter was zoned agriculture, there'd still be like a $16,000 exemption on that one, correct?
In regards to the land?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'd be back to that $1 million of assessment, and if it's going to be $5,344 of tax compared to a grassland quarter. Is that what you're referencing? Yeah.
Robin?
Thank you. The policy that you're alluding to with the 61,540, is that that's provincially mandated, right? That's not municipally controlled at all.
Correct. That's a province-wide.
Yeah.
That one's out of the hands outside of lobbying through RMA.
Okay, thank you.
Ernest?
So when you have this exemption to the farmhouse, is it one quarter or all the, or can you, like if you have 10 quarters, does it pool?
Yeah, it does pool. So if we're using this 1 quarter of grass, the assessment's 5,400, 4,500. That 40, if you only own that 1 quarter, this rapid exemption would be 4,500. So basically, if you had, let's see, if you had 14 quarters of grass, you get your full exemption. A little bit less, right? Just ballpark numbers. You would add up the assessed value of all your farmland, and that would apply to that 61,540 to a maximum of 61,540. And then subsequent, if you had, not to confuse that, but if you had 2 or 3 or 4 houses, you'd get continual second exemptions of half this, which is 30,707.
And if you have land in other municipalities, your domicile is in Cypress, but you have land in special areas, you can pull that land, that value as part of your wrap.
And I coordinated with a few different assessors in the office to make sure that we're accounting for those correctly.
Use your mic. Alf?
So what happens if you have a hobby farm on this one, on the right?
Okay, so let's say you had a 10-acre parcel. 10-acre parcel, and you had your house. You would get 3 acres. 3 acres at market. And when I say market, that's the higher value. So around Medicine Hat, we might be talking about $240,000 assessment for a 3-acre subdivision in that area. So you're going to get 3 acres at market. You're going to get 7 acres at farmland, raising, production, and sale. If you're raising some goats or whatever, just to graze down in your yard, that 7 acres would be at farmland. So then the assessment would be, yep, you pick. So the assessment for that seven acres of farmland would be about $450 of assessment, where in a market setting, it could be closer to most of values in the first three, and your last acre is worth the least amount, economies of scale, or diminishing return. So really that last 7 acres, when I said the 2 acre parcel was about 240, this might also be worth about 240. So that would be about the discrepancy of that last 7 acres is about $240,000 within that 4 miles of county. That's right.
Was that helpful?
Well, not for the farmers. Made it worse.
I do want to,
Yeah.
through the chair, I do want to comment or shed some maybe bigger picture of what I heard from the discussion today. This is my Super Bowl, right? Talking about this stuff, but there wasn't one comment that didn't have merit. There wasn't anything off base. Each and every comment and discussion piece and contribution was exciting to hear, because I could see through the differences of opinion lies the truth. And I'll just make a comment on the 20th percentile. That is a very fair representation of taxation, in my opinion alone. But it needs a couple things. It needs council would accept that what others are doing is correct. So when we look to our peers, the other municipalities, we would have to rely and trust in them that they've done the right thing. I don't want to say that we would be following someone's lead, but it would be following others' trends, relying on them that they've done the right thing. So when Councillor Oster brings up the concept of 100%, brings us into the 44th percentile, that's not wrong either. In a systems thinking, or bringing all the gears in the machine together in the transmission to see how much, right? We're a motor together, but each one of these property classes is a gear. And we have to decide how many teeth to put on each gear. That's all we're doing, right? So if you break it down into that concept, none of the discussion was even remotely incorrect or quite the opposite. It was a very good point. So somewhere in between those discussion points is where the truth is. The 100% might actually start to bring in other factors, such as if we are, say, the 20th percentile, what's our service delivery in the residential sector? If we are, and I don't want to muddy the waters, but I want to bring up a clarity in methodology. If our service delivery is in the 40th percentile of residential, then the elected officials would say that we have the luxury of the support from the linear currently. We'd like to be at the 20th and have, if we're at the 40th, maybe our taxation level can be at the 20th, but we need an exit strategy if the resource sector goes away. If our farmland delivery is in the 80th percentile, perhaps our tax rate needs to be between the 80th and the 40th. And just concepts and methodology, I'm not making recommendations, but just I'm encouraged.
Robin?
Just to kind of carry on a little bit on Steve's comments and to disagree with some respect, in that the danger of talking about the delivery model on a percentile basis is to ignore the influence of the linear subsidy. And again, with respect to Councillor Gagley, a comment that you made earlier was that agriculture built the county, and my heritage, my family is all agriculture in this area. I'm not going to dispute that it hasn't had a major impact in where we come from, but the reality of it is that our at best, agriculture has contributed maybe $16 million worth of revenue in pure revenue. That's 3 years worth of overhead and maintenance. There's no way that we can stand here and claim that ag has built. We can certainly prove that resource revenue has contributed immensely. And so anything that doesn't basically point out that number one and first and foremost is that resource revenue has primarily built, that we've utilized and we've subsidized as a result, and that moving forward, it's important to have kind of that methodology that provides us with a way to explain to our residents when they ask us, why is it that things are so uneven? To be able to say that, yes, absolutely. Right now, we're going to take the approach of being takers. We're going to look at what others are doing, and we're going to say that we're going to apply a 20th percentile target across the board. That might buy us 4 years to do a lot more of the more in-depth searching. But when somebody comes to me and says, why is it that residential is so much higher than farmland? We can say, you know what, that was then, here's now. I know that you want to see some big rebalancing and reckoning, and that happens with this plan because residential actually doesn't change in 5 years, other than the CALA. It stays because we're at the 20th already. And Darcy's right in that there's the residential component of the farm and ranch community that's out there that's already contributing to that. They're not getting hit twice in residential and in farm. We're bringing it up to the 20th percentile. That is the correction. And then it's sustainable that way. And then, to be able to get deeper into it can work down the road. But I think that the moment that we start flirting with the mindset of user pay is when we really run the risk of overcomplicating it so badly to the point where, that saying you can't see the forest through the trees. This is such a simple way of just saying 20% right across the board. We've had numerous meetings about it, yet we still get distracted by the details. I don't want to overcomplicate it so much that we'll never get somewhere. And I think that we're there. And I understand what you're talking about with your budget meeting coming up. I hope that we can vote on my amended motion now so that we can give you guys some direction. We still have time to have more debate and discussion at our next meeting. But we're just rehashing a lot of the same details that we've hashed out many times. I appreciate the fact that this is in open. And I also appreciate that there's probably some people at home that are going, holy crap, where did this come from? And this has been a lot of dialogue and a lot of conversation from everybody at this table, including our staff, for years as we're trying to talk about where we've been, where we're going, how do you adapt to risks that are coming up, how do we pivot, but how do we move forward knowing the risks, but still being good governors and governing with wisdom. So with that, I'll stop. My motion would probably stay exactly as it is.
Darcy?
My comment about the ag building the county was when the county started, the province sold leased land and you could make it deeded. So the county started off 25, 30 million to the good. That's what I meant. So that's there for 30 years.
And we do 25 million a year in expenses. So you covered the first year. Ernest.
Well, Darcy sort of touched on what I was thinking. The one thing that, we have to remember that this used to be an ID, which ran with a lot of provincial funding. A lot of the infrastructure was built with Alberta government money. It wasn't oil, it wasn't gas, it was because it was an ID. And when we voted in the 80s, I believe it was, to become a county, that's when, the infrastructure was took over and built by the county. So just a little bit that, a lot of the infrastructure was built by Alberta Transportation, not our taxpayer.
Richard?
So one of the common questions that I get asked, and I think the rest of you do too, is the fact that what do I get in that's different from the farmer when I come to pay my taxes? So Dustin, I'm looking at you again. Do you have anybody out there that owns an acreage in your area? Pardon me? Does that acreage get any different services? What more services would that acreage get versus the farm beside it? And the acreage is paying substantially more than 100% more. What's the difference?
I guess it would depend on location and what style of acreage it is.
So what would they
Is
get
that-
though for a service? Would they get
Because-
more
well-
fire protection?
Well,
No?
it really all depends, because if we're gonna compare apples to apples,
Yeah.
if we're gonna, like, so we'll use my place versus my dad's place, for example, nothing. But if we compare a multi-parcel subdivision, which is essentially a group of acreages, there's quite a bit more service in that area due to the road networks that that they're attached to, because they're all gonna be paved for one. So we look up at the Wholesome Road, for example, and any of those multi-parcel subdivisions, they all have internal paved service roads or oiled or whatever they may be. They have oil going to them. So that is an added service if we want to look at it that way.
But that's all done by the contractor when he develops it.
But the roads won't be that go to them. And through the years, we've done all those roads that go to those now. For the most part.
But if that's oil, and correct me if I'm wrong, if that's oil going to that, that's still charged back to whoever's in that subdivision pays a portion of that oil, do they not?
No.
Is it dust control not charged to everybody? What's that?
When you initially, your multi-parcel or inner road or whatever, right? When you buy your parcel of land, the developer puts that in to the price. But as soon as the county approves all of that, the county fixes it after.
Sorry, so like in a situation where you have 10 acreages and there's a common gravel road that goes into them, and after the subdivision is built and they want to put pavement in there, the local improvement bylaw can be done, drafted, approved by council, split amongst the 10 or 13 people, amortized out 15 years based on council discretion. Something like that could be done, but there's really no.
Yeah, we don't allow that though. I think what there's like, you can't do a subdivision without oil in or paving that road. It's not allowed.
Just the internal paved service road.
Yeah.
The road attaching it doesn't have to. And I can count of like 5 now that we've done since I've been on council.
Out by Cabin Lake where Heislers are, there's a gravel road that goes in there. That's not paved. If they wanted to pave that, they could go in and do a local improvement bylaw on that.
Before the bylaw.
Yeah.
Ernest?
Yeah. Just lost my thought here for a second, that with, pavement and stuff, these acreages, they're, there's a cost, and I know what I really wanted to talk about was the dust patches came up. And dust patches, you have to, the county supplies them if you have over, I'll just say 200 cars a day. I don't know the number. If not, you have to pay for them. So lots of people that have dust patches in the high traffic areas, that dust patch is free to them.
Robin?
I don't want us to get lost in the details because this is a much more of a municipal development plan conversation versus an assessment and taxation. Would you agree? Like, I think that a lot of this kind of conversation is probably more tied into that. I don't want it to distract from where we've gotten to on the taxation side.
Steve? No, he's talked too much. Go ahead, Steve.
I guess as an assessor, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the number one, the first fundamental in assessment and taxation in Alberta. And that's the foundation that kind of guides or governs our system. And our system's called ad valorem, or according to value. And in Alberta, the principle or the reason that our system exists, or the way that properties are weighted are according to value. And so the foundation might go something like this. The property you choose to own in a municipality identifies your ability to contribute to the burden. Okay, so ad valorem, according to value. The property you choose to own or hold identifies your ability to contribute to the burden. So when people choose to hold and own property, it generally identifies their ability to contribute to the burden, and it's a burden of the whole. We confuse things by breaking them down into property types, but if we keep that first foundation ahead of us when we talk or think about these things, just would be important to come back and visit that, what it is and what we're trying to achieve.
Good point. Okay, what was Robin's motion? He changed it to. Okay.
Based on the 20th percentile for the next meeting. Yeah.
Richard?
But could we not have more of a discussion with Steve's information on what the taxes are for each quarter of land? Like a irrigated, non-irrigated, based on, can we not discuss those numbers?
I don't, so for one, I would not accept that as a friendly amendment to the motion I'm making, because I think that it goes against the principle of the 20th percentile being fair and equal for everybody. However, there's conversation from an assessment standpoint that I'm sure, Stephen, you have talked about in the past as well, where there is a difference and a mechanism within the assessment process that allows you to have a higher amount of profitability based on whether or not it's irrigation or dry land, because quite honestly, there's no distinction between dry land and irrigation from a mill rate perspective. So we only have one mill rate for farmland. Everything else is managed through assessment. The entire motivating drive and force behind this whole percentile thing is that everyone is treated equally. The difference is if we implement this like it's presented at the 20th percentile over 5 years, is that the ag will go up, the residential won't, because of the fact that it's already at the 20th percentile. The ag will go up, the commercial will go up, the linear and machinery equipment will go up, each one of them at a different percentage, because it's an adjustment, and it's an adjustment that'll be happening to get it to where it may not necessarily be to where you want it to be, but it's going to be to where the 20th percentile is, which is a fair first adjustment where nobody can come to us and say, oh, well, it's unbalanced. Well, you know what? It may be unbalanced, but it's a provincial unbalanced. And unless we start going into, I believe, Steve, is it Saskatchewan that assesses farmland at market value? Because even if, let's say that hypothetically that we went to a market-based assessment model on farmland versus it being regulated, you're going to see every municipality in the entire province change all their mill rates, because there's only a certain amount that a market can bear as cost. And I know I find that even in my own business, and when it gets to be a point where it's too high, it doesn't really matter whether it's regulated or not, because unless you exceed your 5-to-1 ratio in Alberta, you have the ability as a municipality to set your mill rate wherever you want it to be, right? And so, yeah. Sorry, that was I answered your question, but yeah.
So my challenge is here that the fact that, yes, we can go with that 20%, but we have not made all the councillors aware of the fact of this is the imbalance between residential / country, the acreages versus the farmland based in values. We have not addressed the fact that there has never been an increase, not even a cost of living increase in the years gone by. And I would just like it so that we sit down here and you guys have your, we just look at the assessments, we look at where it's been and where it would go even at this 20%. If it's only gonna, if 20% is gonna bring in us another $100,000 based on the fact that there's less than 600 is paid in there now, because I'm taking out the houses, I'm taking out the home places, right? Because there's already shown there's a big tax difference there in those values versus the acreage. And that the services, as we've said, Dustin, your dad doesn't get any more services than you do, yet he probably pays twice as much. So I need to be able to go to the people. when I'm questioned, and you guys do too, because it's election time coming up, and you need to explain why there's such a big discrepancy. So all I am asking is for some time during this next conversation that we have when we do this 20% so that everybody leaves here understanding that the fact that, yeah, here's Richard, he's asked for 100% increase in taxes. But if I take a piece of grassland and it doubles to $40, it goes from $20 to $40 over 5 years. Am I hurting that ratepayer? Am I hurting that farmer by doing that, who has not had an increase, not even a 2% increase for 20 years plus?
Is incorrect though. Sorry.
What's incorrect?
Well, in 2015, there was a 15% increase the council did before this last election. That was an initial increase. It was the only time that the mill rate's been amended.
15%?
15, I think it was 15%, was it not? It was between 8 and 15, but it was the only time that.
Hold on,
Sorry.
Steve.
Yeah.
It was 2013 or 2015, I can't recall. If it was 2015, it's 2015, but it worked out to a 15% aggregate or total tax bill increase, but it was 27.4% increase because it was one mill addition. So it was a 27%. So many of the, like if you had a $20 tax bill, you went up that 20%,
Which was how much?
a couple dollars, not quite a burger and fries.
Did we even bring in $100,000 increase with that increase?
No.
Yeah,
No.
we did. From what we did, it was a $203,000 increase, and it was a little bit more than a mill because we were at 2.78. We went to 3.56.
Well, I meant, Dustin, how much in dollar value did we bring in? And because my argument is the fact that Darcy just made the comment that we only spend money in municipality, like in the hamlets, right? But last council meeting, we spent $10 million on roads. And then this council meeting, we spent $2.5 million on roads. So we're really not being fair to everybody. We make sure that our roads are looked after as much as the hamlets are.
Ernest?
Just a point, that was all MSI and gas tax money, that none of that was ratepayers' money. No, but you were mentioning the roads that we pay, we're paving the road and we're doing this. That wasn't taxpayers' money. It didn't matter whether you paid $2, that was MSI and gas tax money.
Ernest, in the big wheel of things, it's still taxpayers' money.
Yes, but you can't say that as a rural thing, I didn't contribute that. It was only the guys in town, because none of us contributed any money to that except the Alberta taxpayer.
Dustin?
Just one thing on roads, when we talk about them, I think the one thing we tend to forget is roads are accessible by anybody. So when we take and put money into a road, it's accessible by anyone in the country or in North America, for that example. And in the grand scheme of things, the roads aren't ours. The roads are the province of Alberta's.
Actually,
We're just the stewarding authority that maintains them in the grand scheme of things.
It's actually the Queen's. It's not even the Alberta province. Okay, I like Robin's idea of bringing it back. I am in complete agreement that something has to change. I'm not going to argue it by any standard of meaning, but I want to see what comes back and we can go from there. Well, Robin has this motion on the floor. If you want a motion afterwards to get Steve to bring something to you, you can do that later, but this is a motion on the floor right now. Any more comments about the motion? Not seeing any. I'm going to ask to bring back to the next council meeting with the 20 percentile.
So it'd be reflective in the draft budget, the 20 percentile. That was the first motion, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
And the intention, the difference between today's conversation and next meetings is the intention is to make a decision on it, right? Versus continuing to kick it down the road. So, yeah.
Should we have a second motion to that effect? So direct administration to use the 20 percentile, and then that's one motion, and then further with another motion saying that administration brings back more information in regards to the 20 percentile and other related information to farmland.
I respect that you're trying to make everybody comfortable with that. My motion right now is the 20th percentile because I truly believe that everything else that we're talking about right now is details that are confusing it.
Okay.
I don't think that there's a way to go forward where we achieve what is defendable as fair and a methodology that involves anything beyond what I'm making this motion for right now.
Okay, fair enough. We've heard your statement towards the motion, so everybody's ready to vote now? Vote. Carried. Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break and then we go into our next delegation. So that took me forever to get that.
Hi, Roger and Nicole. They're just going to take a 5-minute break and then we'll get started. I see that there's a third. Do you guys have somebody else, Trent, that you want me to admit to the delegation as well?
Yeah, okay. I don't know if I'm breaking up here in my house today or not, but Trent Rayner, the principal of Irvin School, is going to join us.
You know what, for the purposes of this, maybe both of you, it might be beneficial to shut your video off when you're not speaking, because I noticed, Nicole, you were a little bit glitchy as well. So is it just the two of you, Roger? I can see your face. Is it just the two of you?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. It's just really quiet.
Hello?
If
Okay.
council is.
Yeah, Trent Rayner is also going to join.
What's that, Nicole?
I was going to say if you use data on my phone because, yeah, rural internet. I hope that's a topic you guys are discussing.
I know, right? I agree. Just maybe shut your video off, Nicole, and then that will help. So just give us 5 minutes. Am I supposed to admit this Trent? Or is it just you two?
Yes, please.
Just admit him?
Trent Rayner is coming as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, please. Yes.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, Roger, I'm just going to shut the video off for just 1 second.
Okay, who's running? Roger's running? Okay, Roger, everybody's here, so I'll give you the floor.
All right, thanks very much, Dan. Well, first of all, thanks for allowing us to come in and be part of your meeting today. I do appreciate that. With me, I have two people. Nicole Neubauer is with me from Neubauer Farms, and she's going to be our champion of a program that we're building in Irvine. And we have also got the Trent Rayner, who's our principal in Irvine School. So before I turn it over to them to do the bulk of the presentation today, I did want to say thanks to both the county and the staff at the county office. We were pretty successful last year in our partnership when we did the paving project there to pave the track around Eagle Butte, its track, and connect it to the existing walking track in Dunmore. So just wanted to let you know personally, I appreciate that. That project is just about done. We have to do the landscaping piece in the middle of the track to make it look pretty, but also more functional. So that's awesome. So we do appreciate that work. So without wasting too much time in terms of the half hour we have with you, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about what Prairie Rose has been focusing on, and before I turn it over to Nicole. We've been spending a lot of time building programming all over Prairie Rose. So in the last 3 years, we've built an equine program in Irvine, hockey academies in 5 places, including Irvine and Eagle Butte. We brought 2 under-18 hockey teams from Banff, which are bolstering the enrollment in Eagle Butte School. We built a flight academy for Eagle Butte as well. We've got various agricultural programs that are going to start for September. We built a partnership with Medicine Hat College and Medicine Hat Public and Cooley Collegiate for our outreach schools. We're about to launch a new art academy that's going to come from Parkside School in Redcliffe. And we're also doing a fine arts academy in 7 persons. So those are just a few things. And today we just want to talk to you about one more of those things. And that's the Irvine School Agriculture Discovery Center. And we'd like to partner with you once again. And that's the intention as to why I come and talk to you today. So I'll turn it over to Nicole, and I'll pick up at the very end of our process here. So go ahead, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Roger. Just for clarification's sake, our meeting officially got started at 2:37. Those of you who know me as a talker. When I speak with something that I'm very passionate about, I tend to go on and on. So can you please, can someone just confirm what is our hard stop time for this meeting today?
2:38.
Everyone wants to be a comedian. So do we have till 3, or can we have until just after 3?
2:50 and then questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So many of you are familiar faces to me. I'm Nicole Neubauer of Neubauer Farms. I've been running an agriculture education program here on our farm since 2005. And that program was born of the idea that children, as well as adults, are becoming increasingly disconnected with agriculture and ultimately where their food comes from. So since 2005, we've hosted over 20,000 students with about 5,000 adults that have accompanied them to help fill in the blanks and unlock the mystery of our food system in Canada. Many of you are farmers, and I'm sure that you're acutely aware of the fact that increased legislation and red tape and folks that are making decisions about how we farm can definitely have a very negative consequence on sustainable agriculture moving into the future. So that's just a little bit of a background for me. I'm a big believer that what you understand, you will defend, and what you don't understand, you won't defend, and what you don't defend, you can lose over time. So that is kind of the premise of what this Agriculture Discovery Center has been built upon. We all know that the social fabric of our rural communities is rooted in agriculture. The people who built our communities, well, they came to Canada as a request of our government to settle on the prairies and grow food to sustain those throughout Canada, who then built the infrastructure in the cities that created the Canada that we know today. Agriculture has forever been the bread and butter of our economy. So today we present to you a student-led farm initiative that we call the Agriculture Discovery Center, which will be situated on the Irvine School playground. The idea is that this complex will serve as a place to celebrate with great pride Alberta agriculture, past, present, and future. You'll commonly hear that agriculture is stated to be one of the key drivers in economic recovery. And we do have the opportunity to lead that charge if we're permitted. According to the Canadian Center for Food Integrity, 91% of people claim to know little to very little about agriculture, yet 75% of them said that they would like to know more. And at the Irvine School Ag Discovery Center, we're going to do just that. So I had sent a PowerPoint, or Roger sent a PowerPoint presentation. Do we have someone who can bring that up for us, and we can just take a quick run through the slides?
Yeah. Yeah, we have all the slides, hard copy in front of us.
Oh, you have a hard copy. Perfect. Okay. So essentially, the Irvine Agriculture Discovery Center will be a program that will cultivate agriculture connections. So not only with our rural youth, but also we have an urban outreach component, which would set this apart and make it quite unique to other programs that exist throughout the province and beyond. So basically, what we are proposing to do is to construct an agriculture farm that will raise livestock, will raise crops, will also raise produce. And the students at Irvine School will have the opportunity to interact in that environment on a daily basis when they're at school, from about mid-April to about the end of September, beginning of October. So it is a seasonal project, simply because the expense and the constraints that come with trying to operate a farm throughout the winter, at this point in time, we felt maybe wouldn't be justified. So basically what we really want to do, the root of the problem, or the root of the challenge, is how do we feed 9 billion people by 2050? Well, the answer is we use sustainable agriculture practices. So putting the planet, people, and profit in perspective, and that's what this program will do. So we know that we need to build capacity in our rural youth. The kids that will eventually work in agriculture, not necessarily just driving the tractor, but also being the agronomist or the lender or the insurance broker, the kids that are raised on farms are the ones who are going to ultimately come with the prior knowledge that we need to really do a great job in those professions. So we want to build capacity in rural youth so that they'll pursue careers in agriculture, so that perhaps they'll go away from the community, but they'll move back to the community to raise a family, because we know that kids that are raised in rural settings, they love those small town values. They love that sense of community that comes from being coming from a small place. However, they move away and they move to big centers because that's the only place that they can pursue education and work opportunities that lead to meaningful careers. So the urban students would have an opportunity to engage in the many facets of agriculture, and you know, they come with a lot of prior knowledge, so we can really leverage those skills that they have at home. I'm not going to go through every single one of the slides, because I know that you can absolutely review them at your leisure, and we do want to leave an opportunity for questions at the end. But a really neat component to this whole strategy is that we've learned through COVID that we can do online learning, we can do distance learning, and we can teach kids all kinds of material and content using Google Classroom. Social media is another great tool. And basically what we'd like to do is propose an education outreach where Prairie Row School Division will reach out to schools in inner city Calgary. Our Irvine students will become ambassadors of education. They'll learn valuable skills like presentation creating, public speaking, and nothing cements knowledge like teaching, and they will become teachers of agriculture. So if the grade 4 class in Irvine is doing a massive school waste reduction campaign by using worms in a vermicomposting cycle, they can dial into a Calgary school in inner city Calgary when they're studying reducing waste in our world and talk about what they're doing. So that outreach piece, I think that virtual outreach piece will really allow us to get our message out to places where it's needed most. So you can see the project timeline. We want to get started here in the spring. We want something positive and wonderful to look forward to at the end of COVID. So we propose this this project will build capacity in our kids. Like I said, it'll also give them some really valuable life skills. So this will be a student-led initiative. We'll create critical thinkers. There'll be community outreach, entrepreneurialism, leadership, goal setting, environmental stewardship, and financial management. So all skills that will serve the students well. I know that from a county perspective, you really want to know what this is going to look like. We've got some slides that include a bit of a detailed map, and along with some pictures of the types of infrastructure that we're proposing. On to required services. We're going to need a few things to really get this off the ground. Obviously, water is required to make anything grow more than ever in our very dry climate. Water will be an integral part, power, and ultimately gopher control. I kind of put that down with tongue in cheek because everybody needs some gopher control somehow. So we see this as having some tremendous benefit to the community, one being a little green sign that'll be on the highway as a tourist attraction. Ag tourism is big. I can tell you right now, from my perspective on my farm, I could host thousands of people a year if I wanted to, just because people want that connection to agriculture and where their food comes from. So we're going to give that to them in Irvine, and that'll be an opportunity to bring in some funding and create some sustainability for this program. We could also participate in events like 20-mile post days to further enrich that. So basically, this is an opportunity to really build a legacy. Irvine is a community that's very near and dear to my heart, to my family's heart. Mark's, my husband, his family settled north of Irvine in 1910. And we really see that this is an opportunity for us to give back to a community that has given so much to us. So at this time, I'd just like to pass the mic over to Mr. Trent Rayner, principal of Irvine School, to provide a teacher perspective regarding the program.
All right, thanks, Nicole. I guess I will. I like to talk quite a bit as well, but under the time constraints, I'm going to kind of pick and choose some of the points I was going to speak on. From, obviously Nicole nailed it with the agricultural side, but I think I'd like to talk about things from the school perspective, and I guess what I'll focus on the most is the importance of programming, that I've learned about over the past few years, for sure, throughout our division. And how this came about to us was Nicole went to the division, and as she just said, she'd like to give back to the community that's given her so much. So she really was interested to bring something like this to Irvine. And of course, they asked, what did I think? And, like I said, what I've learned is that unique student-based programming is key when it comes to student happiness and when it comes to student learning engagement. So while I'm not necessarily an agricultural professional by any means, I was fully on board with the opportunity to bring something like this for so many of our students that have that interest, and even just as importantly for the ones that necessarily don't and could learn a lot from some of the things that could come from a program like this. So we went ahead. I asked Nicole to speak to our staff because, they do have a lot going on, and we've added a lot of programming, and, I didn't want to force things on them that maybe they said that they were rolling their eyes while she was presenting, and they're like, oh, one more thing to do. So I said, let's present it to the staff. If, there's not a lot of interest, maybe we present this to another school. Well, as I kind of guessed and was happy to see, when that meeting ended, I almost had to mediate. Nicole was swarmed by several teachers talking about, oh, I worked on my uncle's farm, and oh, I still work on this farm. And when I grew up, and I have an interest in this, and hey, you know what? I run the shop and I can build this. And it was chaotic, and the excitement was palpable throughout the room. So it was, yeah, you know what? I guess we're going to go ahead with this from the staff perspective anyway. Mr. Clark then joined the team and was going to help us out with things like today, with bigger picture items and problems. And he said, you know what's been successful with some of our other programs is champions. And besides Nicole, who's the ultimate champion of this, we need to have champions, that are going to help run this from staff. And so I sent out an email to try and get a committee going. Wasn't sure what the interest would be like, but within the next day, we have a committee of 12 school-based people between teachers, administrators, educational assistants, and Nicole and Roger. So we have quite a strong committee of all sorts of different champions who are super interested in this. We also are going to be adding in parents. You can't keep secrets very long. And of course, they've caught wind of this, and I've got some emails about, we want to be involved. This sounds exciting. So we're going to invite them to our next meeting as well. And then of course, where this all is going to lead to is having student investment. And the best way to get student investment is to have a student committee. So while we might lay down the initial tracks and plans, we ultimately want this project to be steered by the student population and have them be invested. So they're going to be heavily involved with every step throughout as we go on. I think, Nicole, I'll skip past that one due to time. I know Nicole touched on all the avenues for our students to be involved. It's very vast. She touched about how this is going to be, it's going to start as an urban school project, but this is going to completely turn into a community venture. You know, from people coming from both sides of the highway, the Elkwater turnoffs, to come and visit the Discovery Center, as well as having our townspeople involved, visiting and learning, directly contributing and volunteering. Bringing in so many of our local professional resources that are either parents in our school right now, or just others from ranchers, agronomists, worm farm professionals, veterinarians, all sorts of things. So our school covers a lot of different social gamuts between our population in the towns of Irvine, Dunmore, and all the surrounding areas we have. But, you know, when it comes right down to it, we have deep agricultural roots here. And I feel like this project is going to relate perfectly within our school families, core values and pursuits. And I guess finally, going back to the programming piece, I guess it's a final brag from the viewpoint of Irvine School, is we're really lucky that over the last couple of years, I think we've been one of the very, very few rural schools who have actually gained students. And yes, that's even including this COVID year. We've managed to keep our numbers actually increasing. And I know this is due to our diverse programming that includes, it's been mentioned, the South Alberta Hockey Academy, our equine interaction program, to the different pursuits that our students can get through catering, golf. We kind of cover all the gamuts, except, you know, we are missing on a piece that is deeply ingrained in our roots, and that's agriculture. So I feel like this Ag Discovery Center is only going to help, you know, manyfold to continue this trend at our school in increasing our student population and then throughout the whole division. So thank you, and I'll pass it on to Roger.
Okay, well, thanks, Trent and Nicole. That's just fantastic, by the way. I can see your excitement from both of you, and that's what's necessary to make any program a success. So, folks, you have the presentation in front of you. Wanted to give you a bit of a budget breakdown, and I sat down and diligently worked through this with Nicole. And so what are the real costs to making something like this happen? And this is quite unique. You don't often, from a school division, take dollars and put them into corrals and you know, fabric shelters and so on, right? And of course, fencing and video, making sure there's security and all these things are new and different and not normal when you think about running programs inside of four walls of a school. So that's why I'm here today. You have the budget in front of you. What I did do before I came to this meeting is I didn't want to come to thinking that we were just asking the county for contributions of any sort without knowing that we're in the game. So I went to my board of trustees and spoke to them, figured the value over the 2-year period to get this thing up and running before it starts really putting out some of its own dollars in terms of selling a cow or vegetables or whatever you do from a farmer's market perspective and whatever, where it generates its own revenue. We need to spend about 2 years getting the thing rolling. So I went to the board of trustees and they've allowed me to commit $120,000 to the program to start with. We do want to do write the grants and make application for those things, but those things take time. And we'll continue to do that. And that's our ask of you. You can see it on the last slide in terms of also contributing financially. And I also wanted to put into other ways that we could consider some assistance. In the northeast corner, I think I bumped into both the Reeve and the deputy Reeve last week at some point and talked about getting some connection to water, The pump station is right there. We need to get connected to water, and Terrelyn's been very gracious in sending me over all the various application pieces that we will need to complete, and we will do that, and we'll do it correctly. And if we need to update the permit, we'll also do that as well. So you see what the ask is with respect to either financial contributions or in some other ways. These are the facility pieces, the infrastructure that we need to make this program successful. And then after that, I believe it's about the people, it's about the kids, it's about our champions, it's about our teachers. So with that, I'll leave it to you, and you can ask any question of any one of us.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Does anybody have any questions? Robin?
I was chatting as Trent was talking about how the school keeps on gaining students, and I was chuckling because I keep sending more and more kids his way. So you're welcome. I guess the one question I had, I know Dr. Clark, you've been a great asset in our community for your entrepreneurial approach to managing a school board. Trent, could you maybe allude to of programs that are brought forward that have the buy-in of teachers, having 12 or more individuals from a school stepping up and joining a committee? That sounds like a really strong sign of support, but I don't know if that, what could you maybe compare that to other projects? Is 12 good? Is 12 low? Like, do you normally get 30 or do you normally get 2?
Yeah, no, actually, I thought you were going to go the other way, and I wasn't going to be sure how to answer that. But 12 is quite a big number for something within a school. I mean, we're only dealing with a staff of around 25, 30, that sort of thing. So, we couldn't even get a number that large, and then maybe some of the plans get convoluted. When we talk about the hockey academy, for example, we work with one direct champion from the basically that oversees all of the academies. We have a teacher, we have myself, and we have kind of a dry land component, as well as Mrs. Lutz as well. So in that program, that's quite large as well. We only have 5 people on a committee per se that make all those decisions. So 12, I guess, to answer your question, 12 is quite a large number of interests, more than I even thought, and I know there's going to be enough work to keep everyone involved, but it's exciting to have too many than not enough, for sure.
Darcy?
After year 2, what would your projected costs be to keep this program going, and where would that come from?
Well, maybe Nicole can speak to that. She has the complete breakdown of the budget. Most of the costs that are inside what I presented to you is actually physical stuff, like corrals and buildings and so on, and also obviously all the hookups. The other costs are usually absorbed through the staff as well, in terms of the staff in the building and adding that to the program pieces from K to 9. So there's not really a cost factor for the staffing piece. There will be a little bit of, in terms of some consulting pieces that we'll continue to do. We're going to pull on the expertise in our area as well. So, and as Nicole has mentioned earlier, we're also going to generate revenue, whether that's where people come to the farm or we're actually creating a product that actually gets sold from the farm. So that'll also generate revenue. So maybe Nicole, you can say what an overall value would be in terms of operations, in terms of running the farm. You can leave out the staffing piece because I covered that through normal staffing that I would give to Urban School.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Roger. Great question, Darcy. Basically, what we're going to be looking at is purchasing livestock, some feed and veterinary supplies, hay and straw to facilitate that, essentially probably about $10,000. However, just keeping in mind, the plan is to host a harvest gala. I've been part of the Irvine community long enough to know that there's tremendous support for these kinds of events. So we will have the students there's an options class actually at Irvine, which is called catering and event planning. They have kitchen facilities that they can prepare a meal. They have a beautiful gym, tables, chairs, decorations. Again, this will be a student-led activity. So we'll be hosting a community event in the fall. And at that community event, we'll be selling the livestock. Not uncommon to see chickens sell for $1,000 at these kind of events. So we'll liquidate the livestock. with the exception of maybe the cow, because I'm thinking, you know, we're going to have a cow-calf pair. We're going to want a nice, docile, quiet cow. She's probably going to go home to maybe my farm to be bred and come back and forth or whatever. Essentially, we're going to raise money from ticket sales and a silent and live auction in the fall. That'll be our big money generator. Then the 3,000 students who come to my farm every year, I'm going to direct them out to Irvin. So at a user fee of $10 a piece, you know, simple math, that can generate, you know, another $20,000 to $30,000. In addition to that, we would also be able to host some ag tourism off the highway, charging, you know, an admission fee and market garden, that sort of thing. So I think without much of a stretch, we'll easily be able to double the amount of funds to cover our expenses to maintain the program. Certainly that's the goal, and I don't foresee that being a problem at all, just because there is such a hunger for this type of opportunity in the community.
And just if I look at year two, even in terms of what we look at after the big pieces of infrastructure are done, we're looking at about $40,000 on an annualized basis that we need to have as revenue. And from a school division's perspective, that's not hard to support either, even outside of the revenue generator that the farm will create.
Anybody else have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, it's Tara Lynn. Just a couple things on the development side. So when the original development permit was applied for, it's a discretionary use, and the intent has changed because on the development permit application, a portion asks, are you hooking up to the utility? And the box was checked no. So to get the water utility there, there's like an offsite levy and that sort of thing that council needs to consider. So if that needs to be applied for right away, so we can get that ball rolling.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. You're right on 3 o'clock, which is perfect because we have another one waiting in line here. So
Okay, well,
Tara Lynn and Kayleen will get back to you here in the future on what comes out of this. So.
All right. We appreciate your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have the power to waive the offsite levy. Okay, yeah. Yeah, and Roger has talked to Dorn about getting a line run over there where they want it. No, okay.
Sent him the information on last, I don't know, 10 days ago, sent him everything and said we need to start, we don't have the authority. It has to go to MPC because it's discretionary, and then go from there.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Because we were in the hallway and we talked to him about it. And as far as we know, nobody on council had opposed anything. They liked the idea, so I told them we'd do what we could.
Yeah, they got to get it that new application, and we can get the ball rolling. Pardon me?
We had already approved this in principle through MPC probably 6 months ago. Has it changed enough that it needs a new application? Is that what I'm hearing?
They're asking for an approach off the township road.
Okay.
They're asking to be hooked up to the utility, and they're putting power in there.
Okay, so from a development permit standpoint, they're still fine. They just need to come through on approaches.
And MP, so they've changed the intent of the development with that infrastructure.
Gotcha.
So because it's a discretion, if it was a permitted use, it's a different ball of wax.
Okay.
But because it's a discretionary use,
okay.
Administratively, we don't have the latitude.
We also have those offsite levies we got to look into and that kind of stuff, right?
That's for your bylaw, and council would deal with that. administratively, we don't have that latitude.
What if they had a water tank or 2 water tanks that they just ran overland and didn't actually run water underground right to it? Which, sorry? Oh, okay. So it's no longer a temporary building, it's basically more of us. Okay. Okay.
Don't we have a bylaw that there's no coverall buildings? And she had mentioned that they wanted a fabric building in there. Is that different because it's not residential?
Because it was public use or public institution zoning, it's different. But we can discuss this further because I believe under unfinished that the delegations have a spot to discuss.
Yep. We'll come back to it.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go on to our 3 o'clock one, which is the library building. Good afternoon, David. Yeah. Just push the button, it'll turn red. No. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Cox. I'm with FWBA Architects in Medicine Hat. And we've got a presentation for the concept design for the proposed urban library that I'd like to go through today. I think the presentation was sent out previously, so everyone probably has had a chance to review it once, but I'll just flip through the slides here. If there are any questions, just interrupt me at any time to ask it. We don't need to wait through to the end. Oops. No. The other day, do you mind if I just ask you to switch slides? Can I do that? Just with the left or right? There we go. I wonder if that was, oh, it was probably me. Okay. Yeah, please. Yeah, sorry about that. So the first thing that we looked at with the proposed site, which is across South Railway Avenue from the existing urban library, was some of the primary site context. So we want to look at the climatic conditions on the site and the neighborhood context and take that into account in the design of the library as well. And sorry, next slide. Thank you. One of the primary drivers, you can actually flip through, yeah, a couple if you want, I can, is the park, which is kitty corner to the proposed site. I've got my clicker. Here, we've got our site extents. So we want to be conscious of the park's location. As a community building, it would be nice to have some thought into access to the park and supervision. Up in the corner here is a windrose specific to Irvine. So this is a diagram that shows the strength and predominant wind directions in the community. And it's what we all know and would expect in this area is that our strongest winds and most predominant winds come from the south-southwest through to the west. So we want to be sure to create some sheltered outdoor space in consideration of those winds. And finally, the sun angles, which are represented here. And again, as we know, we've got a very high summer sun in our area that comes down quite a bit further, rises a little bit further to the east and sets further to the west. The winter sun angles are almost of more concern, and in the shoulder seasons, especially when we get into the late day sun, we want to make sure we're controlling the glare coming in from the west light. Can be difficult to control in our area. Also, and we can talk about it a little bit more with the overall design of the building, taking into account the solar orientation. Solar photovoltaics, PV panels on the roofs of building now are becoming very cost effective and common. And whether or not they would be part of a project initially, we want to be sure that the project is designed to accommodate them in the future, because they certainly would go on at some point in the future. Thank you. Neighborhood context is the other consideration that we want to take into account. So along South Railway, we have the sort of historic Main Street for the hamlet, red brick buildings, which are predominant across Southern Alberta, of course, with IXL brick coming out of Medicine Hat. The other consideration with our site on the corner here and the adjacent lot, what we would normally think of on a Main Street facade as sort of a missing tooth. You can see that the buildings are built right up to the property line. We typically try to avoid or want to avoid having a missing tooth on a Main Street, but in sort of the rural Main Street context, it's actually something that we enhance a little bit with the design here and creating some outdoor space. So being respectful of the Main Street context, but still having that sheltered outdoor space as a part of the Main Street as well. It might just, oh yeah, that's perfect, thank you. So we've got some precedents to take a look at as well for the library. So library use has developed and expanded over the decades, far beyond the original sort of repository of books and knowledge to becoming a bit more of a community living room space. This is true in big cities. This is the Calgary Library in the top corner here, as it is in smaller communities, and even more so in communities like Irvine, where there aren't as many public or commercial amenities available as in larger centers. The importance of a library really is paramount. So in addition to having obviously access to books and resources, having flexible community space that can be used for community meetings, as well as local community groups. Making sure that we've got a well-lit and warm space is also a priority. And we achieve that through the use of some roof monitors type skylights, which you'll see in the design as well. Thank you. And then the overall area that we need for the building is just about half of the available site area. And there was a program requirement in the initial work with the library as well, that there be some usable outdoor space. So we want to create a comfortable outdoor courtyard. Again, that takes into account sheltering from the wind and creating comfortable areas that are sheltered from the sun. But especially to make sure that it's a 3-season type space, we also want to make sure that we have exposure to the sun in some areas. In our spring and fall shoulder seasons, you actually want some of that light to create warm pockets within the courtyard that people can go out and inhabit. And then some community garden space here as well. I might just pause here actually for a minute, just to go over a couple of the other program requirements that aren't in the slides. So we initially met with Joan out in Irvine to talk about some of the requirements for a new community library and what those might be. A few of the highlights are community space inside and out, that it really does need to be that community living room space, a warm, welcoming environment, abundant natural light within the building, that there should be a meeting room with a kitchenette attached to provide for some of the flexible spaces, an activity space and a kids reading area, space specific to teens in the community, so they have a place to go where they feel that they have some ownership over that space, some office space, display space for community, and as well as ensuring that the building is as environmentally friendly as is reasonable for the type of building and community that we're dealing with. So thanks. Next slide. So we have two options that we're going to present. So the options are option one, which is an institutional construction, is the most expensive of the two. Option two is the least expensive. Now, neither of these two options are sort of the most expensive building that could be considered, nor the least. So this option one is a good quality institutional building. It's comparable to the type of building we're in here for Cypress County. It's non-combustible construction. It's what we think of as a 100-year or a multi-generational building. So that's not to say that it doesn't require maintenance over that period of time, but it's designed to have that type of longevity. A non-combustible building or equivalent, what we call a persist or a pressure equalized building envelope. So a building envelope being the wall and roof enclosures that is designed to not to let water in, but designed on the understanding that water will get in and it needs to have a path to get back out again. So it's designed to get wet and to dry out. Thermally broken aluminum windows, again, very similar to this building. Durable building systems and finishes, so up to an institutional quality. Institutional buildings see a lot more use and a lot harder use over time than a residential building does. So picking finishes that are up to that level of use. Centralized heating, ventilation, and air conditioning with a building management system, so a computer controlled system with adaptability in the zoning so that you can have different levels of heating and air conditioning in different parts of the building. a building design that's specific to the site with the conditions that we reviewed just previously, and a design that not only supports the minimum program, but allows for that program to be enhanced. So it allows opportunities for Joan and for the community in Irvine to actually enhance the programming that's available. Next slide again, thank you. So this is the design for option 1. The building itself sits here on the northwest corner of the site, tight to the property line, so it occupies that corner, with the courtyard coming in on the east side of the site and providing that sheltered outdoor space. So again, with our predominant winds being south-southwest through to the west, we're using the building forms itself to shelter this courtyard. Part of that, and making sure that we've got an exit out the back, is we've separated some of the service spaces for the building, so the utility rooms and the storage rooms, out to the back as a sort of separate bar building. They're still connected by the same roof, which allows us to run our services over, but that provides that sort of robust shelter from those south-southwest winds that we want for the courtyard in the back. Oh, sorry, if you don't mind. No, thank you. No, that's okay. The front vestibule comes in off South Railway into a cafe sort of meeting area here where people can gather informally just inside the front door. The main amenities for the community are available right off the front door as well. So we have a flexible meeting space that would have displays on the walls for more formal meetings or for community classes, and flexible furnishings that can be moved around for other community groups to use as well. That's supported by a small storage room, so there is a place for the furnishings to be stored if there was a group that wanted to get into that space for something like yoga where they just need the floor space. A couple of washrooms right up front, one being barrier-free accessible and the other not, so that community users can pop in to use the washroom quite quickly without having to go through the entire library. Just down from there, we have the librarian's office and the circulation desk, and they're located here to have good supervision over the entry and the entire library itself. So from this position, the librarian can passively supervise the entire space as well as control access through that front door. Coming down from there, we have periodicals and digital media, as well as adult media along the side. The teens are sort of central here, but surrounded by low bookcases, which provide for some computer desktop space, and through the use of soft furnishings sort of gives the teen area a feeling that it's a little bit self-contained and can be personalized to a degree. And then coming down from there, we have the young kids space, which would be populated with bookshelves typically, but when they're moved out to the side, creates that larger activity space, which could also hold community readings. And a drop-down screen allows it to be used in the evenings for a movie space as well. Acknowledging the park across the street, we've got access out this side at the south end of the building, so kids can run across the street to the park, and this creates a bit of a sheltered space where parents can sit outside when the weather's nice to provide some passive supervision there. But the windows facing out to the west from the adult area and their bookcases here provide some bench seating on top, also allow parents to sit and passively supervise the park. Most of our windows do face out to the west because of the street frontage that we're dealing with here. So we've proposed a slatted screen along that side of the building as well that helps to control that west light and glare into the building in the shoulder seasons. The outdoor space has a trellis over top to create some semi-sheltered spaces. And then there's a community garden down at the south end for the community gardening program that Joan currently runs at the library as well. Access to the library, to the courtyard would be controlled when the library isn't in use. So there is a gate that would come across here at the north end and again here on the west. So the courtyard can be closed, but the doors to the library are outside of that enclosure. So the courtyard can be secured even when the library is open if need be. I'm sorry, next slide. Thank you. This is a bit of a 3D perspective that shows the building itself. So the entry again here, meeting room up front. The main library is in the back here. And you can see the form of the courtyard with this sort of S-curve in it is to create a little bit of a wider enhanced space in that courtyard area, right at the center where we've got sort of the most comfortable amenities protected from the wind and that trellis structure protecting also from the sun. And maybe if we can jump to the next slide again, thank you. Some more developed perspectives. So this is the perspective from along South Railway. The main entrance of the building, the block at the front containing that meeting room would be a red brick finish, again, to tie in and respect the Main Street context. But then we've got that opening here that would have a gate to come across where you can access into the courtyard. So it's sort of a free flow through this area during library hours is the intent. Next slide again. Thank you. This slide just into the courtyard shows that expanded area in the center where we've got a little bit more space and a little bit more sheltered space for activities such as flea markets or other community gatherings, and the community garden at the back. This building at the back is that bar building that contains the utilities and provides the shelter from the south winds. Here we're coming back to the courtyard, or the pathway that leads out towards the park. We have the community garden here, and we're just under the shelter of the roof. The building on the right-hand side here is that service building. And then this is out on Ross Street. So these are the slatted screens protecting the west windows from the low west light. And this is the exit off that south end that leads out towards the park with the shelter space for parents to sit, as well as the path leading in from the west into that courtyard space. And a couple interior perspectives. So this is just coming in the front doors. The washrooms and the meeting room are off to the right. This is the circulation desk, and then the cafe area. And when I say cafe, it's sort of envisioned as just a coffee station for the community as you come in. The teen area is here, and then these are the windows off to the west. This is the adult area along the sides. The teen area here in the middle with the low bookshelves and higher bookshelves along the perimeter walls. And then the kids area off to the rear. And here we're standing in the activity space in the kids area looking back. So the way that the slats are turned, they screen from that west sun while still allowing a clear view through to the park. And you can see back here to the librarian's office and circulation desk, that sort of good visibility and supervision through the space. And just on the other side, this is the door exiting out to the west, this door out to the east to the courtyard, and then looking back towards the front entrance here. So the budget numbers for this option one. So this is based on the institutional level of construction. Construction values are going up rapidly right now. Wood, steel, aluminum, copper, all the materials that we normally see driving construction cost increases are all escalating. So these numbers have been developed to provide a little bit of comfort for the county that there is a sort of period of time here where these numbers are valid. The hard construction costs are everything up until the soft cost identifier on the left. I know they're hard to read on the screen, but the hard construction cost is 2.459 million is the estimate, with the soft construction numbers being 483,000. Hard construction is normally what we think of as what is fixed in the building. So if you could pick the building up and shake it, it's the stuff that doesn't fall out, with soft costs being consulting costs, furnishings and equipment, and the things that go into the building sort of outside of the main construction of the project. Are there any questions on this option or on these costs before we jump into the lower cost option? 5,200 square feet for the building. Yeah. Which is just a little over half of the available site area. And so the rest is in the landscaping cost. Okay, so option two, which is the light wood frame. And I want to be sure in presenting these two options that it's sort of understood that option one isn't the most expensive that a building could be constructed, nor is option two the least expensive. So this is a light wood frame building, so it's a more residential style of construction. It still complies fully with building code and energy code requirements. So I don't want you to think that there's compromise there. It's what we would think of more as a 25-year service life in the institutional environment, this type of building. So it will need more work over the short and medium term than option one, which is the more institutional style of construction. So it's light wood frame, combustible construction. A building this size is allowed to be of combustible construction per the building code. So again, there's not a compromise there on code requirements, but it is a residential style building envelope or a single stage bathtub style. So it's designed to keep everything out. And if there is a leak, which inevitably, water gets in, then it does move its way through to the inside. There isn't the opportunity for that water to get back out and for the envelope system to dry. So it's not an institutional style building envelope. Vinyl windows, likely double or triple pane glazing. We're seeing the cost of triple pane glazing come a lot closer to double pane these days. Residential style building systems and finishes, more gypsum board or drywall assemblies on wood stud. a decentralized or residential style HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning system with limited controls. So this is where we may see rooftop units on the building rather than a centralized system, or possibly a residential style furnace, which can limit the zone control in the building as well. So you may only get 2 different zones, say at the front north end of the building, at the back and the south end of the building, a little bit less variability and control. The design considers the site and environmental conditions in the same way as the initial design did, but it's a little bit more generic in form. And the building supports the same programming requirements, but it doesn't offer as many opportunities for those requirements to be enhanced through the design of the building. But again, when I say this isn't presented as sort of the lowest cost option, it meets the same programmatic requirements as the first option. So it's the same building area, allows for the same programming inside the space. It's not a compromise there. Thank you. So you can see the siting of the building again is to the northwest corner. The building itself is much more simple in form. So it's a large rectangular building. We've taken that separate bar for the service building at the back that was sheltering from the wind, and we've incorporated into the building here now as well. So we have less perimeter and less building envelope to finish at the same time. Functionally, the layout inside is very similar. So we have our entrance vestibule off the north with the meeting room, washroom amenities, storage, and the librarian's office and circulation desk still up at that north side. From there, we come in through sort of the coffee station, the teen area, periodicals and digital media, adults, and the kids area is a little bit wider down at the bottom to allow for a little bit more flexibility. The courtyard space still accesses off the north side of the building. It is more linear because we're not sort of playing with the form of the building to provide a little bit more space. So it's a little bit narrow, not quite as nice in its layout as the previous design, but we still have the community gardens in the back, and we still have the access through to the park on the west side at the rear as well, and ensuring that this courtyard isn't sort of single-ended. We would do some fencing at the back to still provide for that block from the south wind, but it wouldn't be as robust as having the depth of that service building in there and providing a proper windbreak at the back. But you can see in the roof plan that we still have a trellised portion over the courtyard here as well. Next slide, thank you. Here's that 3D perspective again, with the roof pulled off. So very programmatically similar on the inside. The courtyard is programmatically similar as well. Everything is just simplified in form. Again, the layout on the inside to support that program is similar, but building finishes would be reduced on the outside. So we would be looking at something more like a stucco or potentially cement board siding or a metal siding versus the brick siding on the exterior. So not up to the institutional level of envelope or durability that we would see in option 1. Thank you. And so the costs on this option aren't as separate as you might think. Part of that, again, is because of the current cost of construction materials. Wood construction is getting closer and closer to the cost of non-combustible construction all the time. It's increasing on sort of a weekly basis right now. So the hard construction numbers again, so the stuff that's sort of physically attached to the building is 1.93 or just under $2 million is the estimate here, with about 400,000 in soft costs on top of that, which brings the total to about 2.3 million as the global budget estimate for option 2. So option 1 comes in at about $5,000 per square meter, or about $470 per square foot is the estimate for the building, including the cost of developing the courtyard space, but sort of applied to the square footage of the building. And for option 2, it's about $370 a square foot, or $100 less per square foot, and about $4,000 per square meter, or about $1,000 less per square meter. Any questions on either of the 2 options, programmatically or cost-wise?
John?
So I've been following costs of wood and stuff like that and easily over the last 6 months, there's been like a 30 to 35% increase. You think that's a bubble from COVID, because there's a real short supply right now, and the demand over the last year has depleted the demand. So do you see that costs may go down from here once COVID's over?
It is anticipated that those costs we're seeing the costs go up as a result of COVID. But this bubble, it is a bubble, but it's anticipated to be about 2 to 3 years as this cost sort of works its way through the system. And that's not just on wood. I mean, other construction materials are escalating as well. Wood's escalating more quickly, but it is expected to be sort of a more prolonged period of time, sort of 2 to 3 years, as this moves through. The infrastructure spending that's being announced in the United States is expected to suck up a lot of the increased production as it comes back online after COVID.
Yeah, I just personally myself, I was building a cabinet at home, and the cost of a sheet of plywood went from $69.99 to $109.99. It's just a shade of 2 weeks. Yeah. So just wanted to add that perspective.
Any other questions?
So I think the last, there's one more slide, is just next steps. So our plan from here would be to provide some promotional plans, images, and 3D images in support of any grant writing or grant applications on a preferred option. There have been a lot of questions on the costs, but I would sort of suggest that probably somewhere between these two options is a reasonable cost for an institutional quality building that is maybe simplified in form from option one. So something that has more of the construction type of option one with the form of option two is probably a reasonable middle ground for consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Good. No, it was good. Thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time to come in.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day. Okay. So 13.1 wind energy. We have that. This is just to finish anything that was discussed, but we have to finish third motion today, right? Second or third?
Nope, it's third.
We've already done second.
Yeah. So for the application for Enerfin, the first and second have been done for the overlay district for the that application, and that council needs to go forth with third reading under the MGA under section. Take my glasses off. So under 619, section 2, with 90 days within an application, the determination needs to take place. So we're at the.
We need to do it.
Yeah.
So this is just for the overlay. It's nothing to do with where the wires are going or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's strictly what their plan was. Robin?
What day are we at now? Like, do we have, would we have?
We have to do it this council meeting.
They can't wait till next council meeting?
No, we hit our 90 days, I do believe, right?
The application was submitted November 2nd.
November 2nd? So it came in December for the public hearing, or January for the public hearing. Yeesh. Didn't know that.
I'm just wondering if that's our current status right now, do we just leave it till next meeting, table it, and see what kind of conversations?
Well, the only difference is it's just for the overlay. It's nothing to do with where the wires are going.
I totally get you. But I'm thinking if we table it till next meeting and then we have conversations based on the way that the conversations went, I don't know that it would necessarily hurt us.
Also, too, it's a discretionary use, so it will go to MPC as well. So that'll be the next step. I would recommend that third reading takes place. because we're pushing the timelines as it is.
I know, but we didn't know before. Now we know that we're over our line, so we should do things appropriately because it's been brought to our attention. Kaylee?
It's written in the Municipal Government Act as well that if there's a license or permit or approval from a provincial agency, so in this case, whether it's Alberta Energy Regulator, Alberta Utilities Commission, the municipality must approve a bylaw. So it doesn't even give us the option to defeat. The only option under the MGA is that if there's a approval given by the Utility Commission, we must approve that bylaw.
That does not, but for the transmission lines and that sort of thing, that still needs to be determined. And the development permit as well.
Yeah, so there's 2 more steps to go. Darcy, go ahead.
So we're 90 days from.
Yeah, we're way over.
The public hearing? Or from when they applied?
From the application.
Okay. So we barely had the public hearing before 90 days.
With the COVID situation. I think that's why nobody has said anything right now is because of COVID. So, need third, yep. Darcy's moving third. I can't even ask any questions. That's that second. Vote. Carried. Okay. So we have Prairie Rose on here. Because that's financing, can we talk about that in camera when we go in for the other, or do we have to leave that out and open?
It depends if what is going to be discussed is going to hurt the relationship of another level of government or another entity.
Yeah. I know we're trying to be transparent, but I think because of our relationship with Prairie Rose, we should maybe discuss it in camera, and then we can, if we come up to a decision there, we can bring it out into open and make the motion and open and discuss it then. Well, we're considering him a partner in other things, so.
And the school is owned by Alberta Infrastructure, the lands. It would be up to you if the discussion is going to be detrimental to a relationship.
Darcy?
They're the other 48% of our taxes. Just saying. I'll move, we go into camera.
Yep.
We didn't go in camera for a lot of the conversations on the hockey rink. I think that this is about, what's that?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, but not all of them. Like, we've had conversations. We made a decision that went against them for a whole lot more than what they're asking for right now. I think that in good faith, they're going to respect a decision that we make one way or the other. I don't think that $120,000 ask is going to blow a relationship.
All right. Darcy moved to go in camera. So I have a motion on the floor, so. Vote. One. Ernest, what did you vote? One. Well, yeah, we've